All right, sorry for that delay, and you're being live streamed now.
All right. Thank you so much, Steve and Madeline. Okay, well, we'll get started. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Um, I know today's one of those virtual meeting days. So it's a little, um, uh, at least it's hard to keep track sometimes, but I'm glad you guys found the time and thank you for meeting. I know one of the things I want to start by talking about is I know typically we have our committee meetings within the keyboard that we have assigned. They happen early in the morning so that when we have our SAC meetings, we can come in and report. But I know today those meetings are happening after we're meeting. So I would just say, um, hopefully you'll get to find some time to join those meetings and just keep those reports um, for the next time we meet. Outside of that, I think I have everybody present, and Amy is joining for Joanne, and then we also have Kate. By the way, one more information. According to our bylaws, a Washburns is they don't get a voting, so they don't vote in SAC. They're a non-voting member. So, Kate, I just wanted you to be aware of that, along with everybody else. Um, but outside of that, welcome everyone. I think I have a couple of things that we want to cover on the agenda. So I'll just go over them real quick and then please feel free to tell me if there's things you'd like to talk about and I'll add to it. And then we'll just briefly talk about the agenda and then we'll go through our university updates and then we'll dig deeper into those agenda items. So things that I have to talk to you about is the higher education training. Um, Dr. JBR has reached out to Fred, and he will be available for that December date, if I'm correct, Dr. JBR. And then we're also meeting with him, so we'll talk a little bit more about that. Um, we will also talk about the second date for higher education. There's some additional information over there, and then also basically our topics for higher education day, what we want to cover. Um, that's basically all that I have in the agenda. Does that sound good for everybody, or are there any agenda items on the floor that you like us to add?
Did you send us the agenda?
Should I say that one more time, Jackson?
Can you like put the agenda in the chat or
Yeah, I can. Here, give me 1 second. I'll do a better job of sharing this early with you guys. I realize that um, we're one of those groups who don't always have like a agenda per se. Hmm, topics. Let me know if everybody can see it.
after those, I'll just give a brief update about the Apply Free Days meeting if that works.
Yes, absolutely. Perfect. Okay, so we'll now move into updates from our universities, and I'll start with Brady, K-State.
Yeah, so from our end, it's been a pretty busy month. We last week had our first student body presence advisory board meeting where we brought together some student leaders across campus with people that historically haven't been involved in student government and had like much of a voice. For example, like we have a student ambassador program with our alumni association. We had our like dorm representatives, some representatives from colleges and things like that. So that was really exciting to get that goal and initiative kind of on its feet for the first time. Um, Also, a few weeks ago, we had our first Alice training, like active shooter training that we hosted for any like students and faculty to join. Um, we didn't get quite the attendance that we were hoping for, but we're excited to continue our partnership with the K-State Police Department to have some future programming, maybe requiring um, student employees to be involved in these trainings in the future just to make sure all students are able to be involved in that process. Um, so we had that. We're right now, a big thing that K-State is working on at a university level is the applied learning experiences, which for those of you who don't know, applied learning experiences are anything from like internships to study abroad, to research, things like that. And our student government, we've been really involved in advocating to make this a graduation requirement. Our university president, this is one of his big things in the strategic plan. So now kind of on a student government side, we're looking at how can we help support this initiative and make sure that student voices are being heard through this process. So that's been a lot of meetings with faculty senators, and just doing our own advocacy at our own level. So those are kind of some of the bigger things that we've been doing at K-State, but getting ready to wrap things up for the fall. So
All right, awesome. Thank you, Brady. We'll just go down the line. Um, Andrew for KU.
Yeah, for sure. So here at KU, we're working on our holidays and higher ed party. It's a holiday party in Allen Fieldhouse where we invite students as well as KU leadership and local and state officials just to connect students with the people that are representing them and the people who are making decisions on their behalf. Working on getting attendance where we needed to be. In years prior, there haven't been as many draws for attendance, but we think that this year, with a lot of advance notice and the venue of Allen Fieldhouse, we'll have a pretty good turnout. Also ironing out our fee schedule, looking to have the meetings in the beginning of February. Also working on a student advisory board centered around campus safety, campus reporting, things like that, to kind of gauge the opinions of people from different constituencies on how safety is being handled and how safe they feel on their campus. So just a couple updates on my end, but broadly very excited for the end of the semester to have a little bit of a break and for the holidays.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Andrew. We'll keep going. Corey Humble for Pitt State University.
Yeah. So my cabinet and I just got back from a ASGA conference in Orlando, where we had some opportunity to meet with some different student governments from across the nation. The amount of times I had explained to everybody that I was from Pittsburgh, Kansas, not Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, had to have been illegal, but that's besides the point. Had some really awesome discussions. I got an opportunity to share some tips, but also pick up on a couple of event ideas that I think could really work at our campus. On top of that, tonight we actually have our first dinner with the president. This is normally a once a semester type of thing. We meet with our university president. We have dinner with him at his house, and the whole Senate's invited. So very excited about that opportunity to kind of work with him after hours on some different initiatives. We just finished up Fall into Service, which is a month-long community service initiative that we started last year throughout the month of October. I want to say 20 plus organizations were involved in on our campus, and they racked up, I want to say, over 5,000 service hours as a group. So that was really awesome. The winner of that competition is getting to donate roughly $1,500 to the community or to the nonprofit of their choice, which is a really cool program that we started last year. But other than that, we're still just poking away. Just like some of you guys have mentioned as well, we're starting that fees process nice and early. Just had our first resolution on the fees committee, and we are getting started working on our meeting for that fees process, getting our different departments their information in. Though of course, one of the things that our fees process is pushing forward this year from SGA is our menstrual product initiative that we're hoping to get covered through student fees, because currently across Pitt State's campus we don't have a initiative at all, really, and it's not covered by any department other than a couple key places that's covered by SGA itself. So that's what's going on at Pitt State, and we have some higher ed day topics that we've been talking about, and I can't wait to share those later.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Corey. Jackson Sinsel from Fort Hays State University.
Hi guys. Tabor's here right now. on our campus. Pretty exciting. We're meeting with them tomorrow, having lunch with them. We're one of the two groups that get to meet with them, so it's very exciting for me and my staff. We're concluding our online student government association with that. They'll be on the Zoom call with us during that lunch, so pretty exciting collaboration there. Um, right now, we're seeing things like a timely grading policy coming from Faculty Senate. That's kind of a new thing that we're hoping gets passed pretty soon. I'm on tuition recommendation committee, and then like you guys have talked about, we're starting the process of student fees and our allocations for our student groups. We just wrapped up the Educational Opportunity Fund, divvy of money for that, so that's exciting. And then the last thing is we're having a reception with the president, and we're trying to include our affiliate campuses with that. So we're working with our three other affiliate campuses to, kind of link up our student governments or our student senates. They have different names for them, but so that's exciting, but nothing else to report.
Thank you, Jackson. Colette, from University of Kansas Medical Center.
Thanks. Here at KU Med, I think one of the biggest things that we've had with the student government is we had a town hall / panel discussion with some different faculty. They were different professors and deans from different schools and programs. And this happened a few weeks ago. It was a really good discussion between students and faculty, and those discussions continued even after we finished the panel discussion. As well as we had questions submitted beforehand, and then we had questions that were live during the event, just to really bring a little bit more transparency and open communication between leadership and students, which I felt like went well. And then the student government exec had a meeting with our executive vice chancellor last week as well, as a kind of a follow-up to that, bringing some student concerns, and just kind of discussing particularly the budget and the financial status of the university and how that's impacting current students. And we also discussed the Cancer Center, which is coming up at KU Medical Center, which is a very exciting time, but it has both negative and positive impacts currently with the construction primarily, and noise and taking away some study space. But we are looking at new areas to revamp some new study space in the coming years, which would be exciting. Other than that, we also have our student fees process going on right now. We'll have a meeting tonight to discuss a lot of or discuss some increases in different student fees, and we're trying to increase a lot more transparency around that, make sure students are more aware of that than they have been in the past. So that's an exciting initiative. And then the other initiative that is happening right now is also looking at different private loans, and trying to make a preferred list for students that is kind of in the up and coming that'll happen really over the next year, as there are changes with currently where students are able to get loans.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Colette. Now we'll move to Amy Nguyen from Wichita State University.
Hi everyone. So within this past month or so, we held our Social Safety Week, which is a week long filled with events advocating for specific issues. And so we did events focused around alcohol awareness, sexual health awareness, and substance use awareness, and then also provided free flu vaccinations for students in the student center so that they can just swing by and easily get their flu vaccinations. And then we also held a community garden showcase. So we opened up our garden area for students to come and paint pots. They were also able to take soil and plant their herbs and things like that as well, which was pretty fun. And then we hosted Interfest, which is an opportunity for international student groups to raise funds for their student organizations through fundraising. And we're also just working on our legal services program. So working through the logistics side with our university leadership on how that will be started off in the spring. And then just mentoring our freshman leadership council, so guiding them through the processes of young leadership, and then also connecting them to student government association in general, hoping to sustain their involvement in SGA after their freshman year, and then just overall planning for the next semester.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Amy. And lastly, Kate Coulter for Washburn University.
Hey, sorry, my camera's off. I'm having a time with my phone. I don't have access to my computer at this moment, so I will when I transition, I may go off for a second and transition onto my computer. But until then, my update mostly contains of our vice president, Ryan Durst. You guys may know him. He is graduating that semester, and so we are currently transitioning into a new vice president. We just hired her. She's from our cabinet. Her name is Lillian Clark. So some of you guys might get to meet her at some of our KBOR meetings. But yeah, that's kind of been the main focus right now, is making sure that transition is going smoothly. Aside of that, we're just wrapping up a lot of things. We have Success Week coming up, which is basically a week before finals. We have a lot of events planned for that. Majority of what we're working on. I do have a question I want to pose to you guys regarding your guys' vice presidents. There is a question that has been brought to our attention on if we should allow our vice presidents to transition that semester due to graduation. I didn't know if that was something that happened among other student governments, or if that's just something that like only we allow. But yeah, I'm kind of open for questions on that if anyone has any thoughts regarding that.
Mm-hmm. Great question, Kate. I'll add something. I know for ESU, it happened a year before or 2 years before, when the president, it wasn't the vice president, kind of quit, or they had to because they had other circumstances. So we just had a special meeting of Senate and asked them to sort of give names of who would be a good candidate for it. And then we basically took a vote on it. But I'll let the other folks here speak and see what they think about it.
I guess from our end at K-State, I feel like we stress that if you are going to run for president and vice president, that you're aware of the time constraints to the role. So our terms go from March to March. So normally, like if a student is going to graduate early, they'd normally be advised that they shouldn't run, just so that whoever is running is going to be serving their full term. So those are usually like discussions we'd have with students before they run, that like if you're going to do this, you're making a commitment to campaign, but also to be in the role till the spring of your junior or senior year.
Yeah, I think Brady said that really well. In our constitution, under the like description of student body president and vice and the entire executive cabinet, the vice president's responsible to find a replacement or find an interim in the event that they can't serve. And like Brady said, it's almost emphasized that you would serve from March to March. We understand that different circumstances may come up and credit hours might align in a way that makes sense to graduate early, but it's up to them to find a replacement or find an interim.
All right. Well, thank you for that. And Kate, feel free to reach out to either one of us or anybody from this group if you have more questions about anything, and vice versa. Okay, and then lastly, report from ESU. So first of all, we had Can the Bods, or Can Emporia, which is a food donation competition we have with Washburn. I was really honored to do this, and always am, to do this with Washburn. This year, I think we've raised a combined amount of 60,000 cans, which is really wonderful and awesome. Of course, the fun part of that is also the winner gets to pie the other president in the face, and ESU had this chance to do it. It was a great time. Thank you, Kate, and her team for hosting us in Washburn. It was a great game. So yeah, overall it was really fun. But I think the goal was to make more resources for campus, and we both succeeded in that goal, and so glad about that. Other parts that ESU is really working on, we typically now currently have 2 sort of separate departments, or if you will, branches. We have the executive branch, and then we have the Senate, student Senate branch. We are working to add a third branch, which would be the judicial branch, so that we could keep ourselves more accountable through the constitutional process. So that's a big change we're working on. We also have an ESU. We're working with our tuition and fees committee to go through all of these student fees that are typically going through. But we are really digging deep into doing more audits, and not in a way that students are having a hard time, but giving them the resources so that they know how to do budgets, especially for those bigger line items who get a direct chunk of money from students. And lastly, this is our last week for our final meeting, so super excited. And after that, we typically have a dinner, either with the president or the vice president of student success. So we're looking forward to that. So that's the report from Emporia State. Okay, I think we can start talking about our agenda items now. The first thing that we want to talk about, I think the training that's coming up with KBOR staff member. I know we have talked about, and a lot of you had a lot of questions to ask regarding, hey, can we bring in more people? Should we initially have a meeting with the student body presidents first? I think those are great questions, and so definitely keep them coming. But I think the goal is to start meeting with Fred, who is the KBOR staff member, to help us find those answers to those questions. And I'll let Dr. JBR speak a little bit into that, Dr. JBR, if you're okay with that, and just give like an overview of what the goal is going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So we do, Oswald and I meet with Fred tomorrow. He is our liaison consultant to KBOR. And so any questions that you've asked before or that you add today to the conversation, we will bring with us tomorrow, just to learn more about what type of training he was planning on providing or could provide, if he's comfortable with there being more people than maybe just those of us on the call today. So we saved all those questions from last time, and we'll bring those forward. So we have that in the works and can update you. I think that meeting's in the morning, so we might be able to get you an update by tomorrow afternoon or Friday at the latest. And then we're also working, we have some graduate students in our system who've done some national level advocacy, and they would be really interested in coming to speak with you guys. So if we could look at possible dates for that in January, they would do that virtually, and it doesn't have to be during a normal scheduled meeting time. You could do a special meeting, and we can keep that brief as well, but just another opportunity to hear from your fellow peers, right, who have developed expertise in that area. So I'll go ahead and go back on mute, but just know that anything that you bring up in the conversation today, I'll take notes, and we'll be sure to bring any questions forward tomorrow.
Awesome. And thank you, by the way, Dr. JBR, for thinking about this. So does anybody have any questions that you would want us to bring up to Fred tomorrow, outside of what we already talked about? So I know we talked about a couple of things. We talked about if we want to have a training with only the student body presidents or the representatives. We talked about if we could have sort of trainings closer to the date of Higher Education Day. I think we talked about making it so that perhaps it could either be a virtual thing that people could join, or an in-person event that students could actually participate in, also closer to that date of. But tell me if I'm missing anything. If you have something now, you can tell us, but if you think about it later, you can also reach out.
Real quick, I think what would be most beneficial, at least for us, would be, yes, the virtual that other people could join, but maybe if that's like either he records that one or he records a separate one that can be posted or shown, because I don't even have the people that are going to come with yet. So it would probably just be me and my staff that would come to the virtual meeting. So just having it recorded would be really helpful.
Yes, thank you, Jackson. I know that was the other thing you mentioned. I will put that in my notes. Absolutely.
I think mostly we were in favor of seeing if he could do a second time closer. If that's something that you could push, I think I would greatly appreciate that. Or we had talked about previously, like Washburn having some connections, or K-State's liaison coming and speaking at a in-person training. I think that's still something that'd be really beneficial. I don't think it's realistic to expect a lot of people to join that live stream outside of us, basically, if that makes sense. I like that a lot of, at least for Pitt State, and I know a lot of other institutions, that you're already on break by the time that that meeting swings around. And I know a lot of senators, at least on my end, aren't really planning on hopping on to anything work related over the break.
I just remembered something too. Question that I would have for him, for you guys to ask tomorrow. JVR kind of mentioned the voting behaviors, but I heard that there was like a purge of like some of like the chairs and vice chairs of committees. Like a bunch of changes just happened. If he could really dive into that, that would be extremely helpful, because that's what I'm hearing here is a bunch of people got, you know, I don't know, it was just a bunch of changing. So that would be extremely helpful.
Yeah, and Jackson, I'll ask a quick follow-up question for that. So when you talk about those committees, I'm guessing you're talking about the legislature. Okay, perfect. I will definitely ask that. Okay, so I think that's a good starting point. I'm trying to remember if Fred gave us an answer, Dr. JVR, if he can do a meeting closer. Yeah, so yes, exactly. So one of the things that Dr. JVR just talked about is our second meeting could be led by graduate students who understand the process or who have had experiences before. I think in my mind, it would be really beneficial to get both perspectives. You have a staff member, and then you also have students who are sort of in that same shoes, if you will, as we are, so that maybe they can explain things in a different way than a staff member would be. But I guess that would be the option. Corey, to your question, and some of you else, if we do want to have an in-person meeting. But we will double check tomorrow and give you a definitive answer. Okay. If there's nothing else, let's move on to the topic of second date, or the backup date for higher education. Now, from the emails that I have received from KBOR, I think there are concerns of pushing it to March, because then we may not have legislatures active. And correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. JBR, if I'm missing any points. But it would be, I think it was recommended to have it closer to either in February or around that time.
Yeah, I sent an email to Fred after our last meeting with now I'm kind of forgetting the exact date that you guys suggested, but maybe after spring break or something. There was definite feedback that that was too late. They understand the weather concerns, but to be sure that you're able to get to meet with people and increase that likelihood, the earlier the better. So maybe another date in February.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I know that's not what we wanted to hear, but it's really helpful to hear that feedback from him.
Mm-hmm. So I want to open it up to the floor. I personally think, I know that snow can be very unpredictable in Kansas. And some of you guys may know more about this than I do, because I've only been here for 3 years, but it can be pretty unpredictable. But in that case, I think it's okay for us to have a date which is perhaps closer to the end of February, or around the time which is about 2 or 3 weeks away from our actual initial date, which is February the 4th. But that's my take on it. I want to hear what you guys have to say about this.
I mean, it sucks that we can't push it back farther, because the whole idea of having a secondary date is purely just to, avoid that weather. I think the farther we can push it back, the better. Like I said last meeting, pushing it back a week doesn't make sense, because the same snow that was the reason we canceled could still be on the ground. So I think late February is going to have to work. And yeah, I mean, I can look and see when that Wednesday is, I suppose. But
hmm and just so you guys know, it doesn't have to be a Wednesday, and maybe I don't have enough information. Maybe there are certain dates that the legislature is in session, but it could be days that, as long as they are in session, we should be good to go. Okay, so I will figure out a couple of dates. I want to talk to um, the legislative, I guess the staff members, because I have to call them and ask if those dates are available to reserve the rotunda. So I will try my best to push it more than a week so that we have at least a gap of a week or more. But I'll keep you guys updated on that. And I'll reach out as soon as I can with that information. Okay. If there's nothing else on that topic, let's move on to the higher education topics we want to talk about. I know there has been a lot of different topics we talked about. We talked about the Kansas Free Apply Days. We talked about a few other ones, but Jackson, I want to start with you if you have any updates on us for that one pager you're working with, and if you need any help from our side.
Yeah, so to be quite honest with you, I started working on something and then I heard that there was a proposal that is coming out to be presented to the board. I think it's in January I attended the meeting last week. And there's a proposal with, I didn't see the official proposal or anything like that, but I heard that it's coming for a 5-day extension to that 3 days. So I don't really need to pass anything once we see that. I'd be more than happy to call for a vote if anybody's in support of that, or we can individually support it from the sounds of it. It would probably be more convincing if it came from like a student perspective, but I know for myself I will be supporting it no matter what. I think it's exciting, and I think it was really convincing the numbers that we saw and how much it was saving the students money. So my 2.5-page document I started working on, I'll just forget about it a little bit. So
Well, thank you, Jackson, for putting in the work and being in the loop about it. And then, yes, Dr. JBR mentioned that they will probably work on it likely no later than March 13th. And so that's helpful to know as well. I know some of the other topics we talked about was financial aid and student scholarships when we met with the regents for breakfast. I am going to be honest, I don't have a lot of information on what the state's position is on financial aid. I know there has been some talks about FAFSA, but that's on like the federal level, if I'm right. But does anyone here know or have any updates on what the state is moving towards in terms of financial aid? If they're keeping it the same, if they're wanting to increase it or decrease it, or anything of that nature.
So, just in my conversations around the applied free days, one of our enrollment managers suggested that I meet with the VP of Finance and Administration, Elaine Frisbee, and I brought up the idea of our position as a state when it comes to need-based aid. And within the region, we're not in a great spot compared to Missouri, Nebraska, Texas, and the states that surround us. Just in terms of the median, we're pretty far below it in terms of need-based aid. And it doesn't seem, from the perspective of some people I've spoken to around the issue, it doesn't seem like the legislature is interested in changing that or offering any more aid. Missouri just cut theirs by about half, so we're a little bit better in the position of the region. But broadly, I don't know if that's something that it's definitely something I'm interested in asking for and advocating for, but I don't know how simple or straightforward it'd be when it comes to the legislature's position on offering more support.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that context. And as you're looking into that, I think that's helpful to know. Yeah, I can do some digging into it. I would highly encourage you guys to do the same too, like Andrew, and see if there are information that we can work on. And perhaps if it's a topic which is okay, there's really nothing much we can do about it, then perhaps we just speak on a higher level topic that, hey, the work that the legislature is doing for providing funds are great. We should continue that so that it's not a chopping block in the future. That's my interpretation of it. I know there's been some talks about some of those cuts recently, so.
Yeah, I definitely think it's something that's still worth asking for. Maybe not like as our primary point, and maybe not even attaching a specific dollar amount to it. The median is around $900 in the nation, and we're sitting at around a little bit under $500. So maybe just pushing to get closer to the median, like the 25th state in the distribution. I think we're around the 38th position right now, but maybe pushing to get closer to that median, and maybe even a regional median might be helpful as well. But just because it might not be the easiest thing to ask for doesn't mean I think we should just can it completely.
Yeah, thank you for that information. I think that's helpful. The other point, and feel free to jump in if there's anything I'm missing, because I'm trying to go back through the notes we talked about with Corey, go ahead.
Yeah. Hey, so as far as this topic of getting more for scholarships, more for tuition costs, one thing that I had come across when asking around my university for possible higher ed day topics actually came from a conversation I had with our new president of the university, who came to us from Oklahoma. And he talked about the fact that our Kansas Promise Act is significantly less flushed out than a lot of our neighboring states. Kind of like Andrew had mentioned with our tuition as a whole. But if you guys don't know what the Kansas Promise Act is, it does act as a need-based aid form for individuals who complete certain requirements for those interested in attending two-year institutions, completing two-year certificate degrees, and it helps pay for those 2 years that they attend college. At this point, it does not cover any four-year institutions outside of WSU, I think, who has a couple technical programs that get covered by the Kansas Promise Act. But outside of that, no other four-year institutions, anybody in the SAC has anything added into that. That kind of sparked my interest in it and wanting to find out more about the Kansas Promise Act and taking a look at seeing if that was something that we could look at asking for expansion on. I know that upon researching other states' Promise Acts, not all other states had a 2-year disclaimer that it was only for 2-year programs. Oklahoma and Missouri specifically, I believe, both allow 4-year programs as long as they, and like it says there, assist students who are enrolled in specific high wage, high demand, or critical need industry programs. And so those are, I mean, that's a super wide, you could define that in almost any way, honestly. And I think it could be really interesting to see if we could expand that need-based aid grant or act that already exists and see if we can expand that out to cover more 4-year institution programs, even if that is just the 2-year programs that we already provide as institutions.
That's a very good point to bring up, Corey. I think that's a really good thing to look into. Yeah, I agree. I honestly don't know a lot about the Kansas Promise Act from what you just mentioned and what Dr. JVR posted, but definitely encourage everybody to read this. And then maybe come back with it to us about what you think about it. What are some of your ideas? Maybe talk to some of your staff members and administrators about, hey, this is what it is. What do you think about this? Or what's your experience with it? But no, I really like that. I think that's a good idea. So Corey, let me ask you this. So when you mention a need-based aid, do you know if the Kansas Promise Act is, I know it mentioned that it sort of connects with FAFSA, but is it like a need-based or is it only for like supplementing if you just attend a 2-year college?
So the way I understand it to work, you can Dr. JBR put in there, it shows you the exact need base that you meet to require, but it's
Oh, there it
applied
is.
on top.
Yes.
It's applied on top of other already existing scholarships, grants, and anything else you have. So say you are attending, just because I know Pitt State. So say I'm attending Pitt State and I have a scholarship for $2,000. Well, that's awesome. $2,000 is great, but it really only gets me a quarter of the way there for Pitt State. And so this would apply on top of that. It also doesn't cover room and board, so it would not pay for housing fees. It does not cover student fees. It's purely tuition based. And again, it shows you there what your family income would have to be. And I think it also takes into account students in the home as well, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe I'm confusing that with Oklahoma's currently. But it also takes into account that, so that way if you have more individuals in your family, I got a younger brother who's going to go to college next year, and I'm planning on going to graduate school. Well, if both of us are contributing, or both of us are going to college and our parents are contributing XYZ, if they meet underneath that specific tier list, then I can be qualified for the Kansas Promise Act, which will cover the rest of my tuition. Hope that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does make sense. No, I really like that. I think I personally will do more research into this. I'll read up, and then I'll give you my thoughts on it. But does anybody else have anything they want to add to this topic?
I gotta look into this. I've never heard of this before today, so.
No.
It's one of those. Oh, sorry. It's one of those retention
go ahead.
pieces, like we talked about with the Kansas Apply Free Days. It's just about keeping Kansas students in Kansas. I'm not sure if what Dr. JBR posted also reflects this, but it does come with a requirement that those who receive Kansas Promise Act funds are required to work and live in the state of Kansas for 3 years after their certificate or degree completion. So it's all about that retention as well, which is why I think it's a pretty good candidate for us to talk about at Higher Ed Day for expansion. But anyway, I digress, and we can move on to something else. I'm just a little passionate about it.
No, I think that's good information, Corey. So thank you for that. I'll add that in the minutes, and so people can come back to it. Honestly, the last thing I had to talk about from all the points we spoke about is student success funding. I know that's one of the topic. I mean, I'm talking high level, but I know we talked about a variety of different things. We talked about maybe measurements to understand how student success works, maybe better processes to track them. But that was the other thing I wanted to put out there to see if you have had any feedback from your campus or personally when you're working with student organizations on your campus. And I know that all of us, okay, maybe not all of us, but I know at ESU at least, we completely fund RSOs through student fees. So it's not, so state can't regulate how we're spending those monies. And so we have more leniency toward it. I don't know if that's the same for every other institution. And if it is, I guess I'm curious as to where else do they want that money to go from the student success side. So that was one of the things I wanted to bring up.
Yeah, our process is pretty similar. Student government specifically is funded mostly by student fees, but when it comes to our student success funding that we get, it's mostly focused on advising and other things surrounding like the student experience outside of things like student government, but definitely focused on the student experience. If I'm not mistaken, this funding isn't allocated into the region's budget in 2027, and I believe they're looking to request that it be reallocated. I think it would be great if we could push for that. That's something I'm definitely interested in pursuing, just because it is pretty reasonable. It's already been in their budget before. It is pretty helpful for all of our universities. We all have our own kind of ways of spending it, but I have our materials, KU materials on, what we've used it on and, what the focuses are around that funding, but it's something I'm definitely interested in pursuing.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And that's a good point you bring up, Andrew, which is looking through the KBOR budget and what they have recommended. I know one of the things that at least I would like to avoid is to, and I think that's totally okay if we do it, but I think we should try to understand what are the asks that KBOR is making as a body, and then try to understand how those fit into the needs that we have, and focus on some of those topics so they make sense, and then perhaps add sub points to it. I would hate to bring in a completely separate point by itself, because at that point it might be totally new. I think we can definitely talk about it, but I think we should be careful about how we approach it in terms of, hey, this is a SAC initiative compared to this is an initiative or something we're passionate about as an institution. A separate point from the student success, but just something I wanted to put out there as well. So I think it's very important we look into that as well. Honestly, that's all the topics I had to talk about. If anybody has anything else that you want to bring up, let me know. We're Brady. Did you have something?
Yeah, I remember at one of our meetings we talked about the Kansas Restoration Act that provided funding
Yes.
classroom renovations at all of our institutions. And I was wondering if that could even be something tied in with student success. I know currently the state is like supporting that right now, but I think even having that as an option to continue advocating for so that our classrooms can still be updated, because I think that's something we hear from students a lot is, if they're in a classroom that has a really loud AC that was from the 80s, like we want to make sure that that's still being supported, because I think it really ties in a lot to like student success and all that. So
Mm-hmm. It's a good point to bring up. Yes. And I think Campus Restoration Act, I may be wrong at this, but I think it kind of ties to, oh gosh, what do you call that? It's sort of deferred maintenance, I think. Um, and I know there has been some cuts with it this year, at least from what I've received communication. I don't know if that's the same for every institution, but I agree. I think that is something we should look into. Um, does anybody have any information on that or anything they'd like to add? Um, okay, well, if there's nothing else, I know I have spoken with, and I think that's honestly everything we had to talk about. Um, hopefully, you guys will be able to join the KBOR board meeting. Um, and so, yeah, honestly, I think we have some good points, but we still have time to come up with newer ideas. So if you're whatever that process looks like for your institution, whether it be talking to administrators, focusing us on the topics we talked about today, digging deeper, or doing campus-wide surveys, whatever that may look like, definitely go forward with that. Corey, yes, I see you have your hand raised. Go for it.
I guess one last question before we fully wrap up. I know that we had talked about you getting a list of what possible representatives that we could be seeing. Are you still confident that you're going to have that list to us by the end of November? I know that I've been working with my vice president to work on a list of our own about senators that our senators would like to meet at Higher Ed Day. But I just wanted to make sure that was still pretty high up there on the radar.
Yes, thank you for that, Corey. Yes, it was the last thing I want to talk about. I did receive, so yes, I am working on that list and I will be able to get it to you guys by the end of November. I've already received one from Fort Hays State and one from K-State about some of their, like who they would like to see as representatives. And I know with Fort Hays, I've asked them to sort of give me a must or more, like you're leaning more towards. So maybe if you're giving me 20 or 10, you'd maybe give star to a couple, which is like, hey, these are our representatives who are very close to our university, or we have a very good relationship with them. or maybe they just represent your district. And then, yeah, so if you send that list to me that you think are good candidates to talk to before November, that's completely fine. If not, that's also okay. I'll put down the lists as I see fit, and then we can switch around a couple of those. But yeah, I will be able to get that to you by November or by the end of this month.
I also had a follow-up question to that. So would SAC be scheduling those appointments, or would our own institutions be scheduling those appointments?
So that would be each of our institutions, Amy. You would have a list of those, and I believe you can go into their website. They have emails, phone numbers. Typically, how we have done it in the past is I've tried email. Emails are great, but sometimes just calling them right away is faster. So that's one thing. I would recommend both. So it would be each of our institutions.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, if there is nothing else, thank you everybody for meeting. First of all, a motion to adjourn. Can I get a second?
Second.
Corey. Thank you. All those in favor, please raise your hands. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. I need to do this more. I feel like I don't do this as often because it's typically the vice president who does it. But yeah. Anyways, thank you everyone. Hope you have a great rest of your week. And hope you have a restful Thanksgiving week.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you.